Hello everybody, okie dokie. I'm just going to invite Tammy in our chat here. Here we go, invite in. So let's just see if I'm doing this. Got all the technical glitches going. You might have to just stick with me for a moment because, oh, here she is. She's joined. But is she joined? Invite. Let's do this. We'll get there in the end. How do I know if they're part of the chat? Let's have a look. Okay, accept. I'm accepting. I'm accepting. It won't let me accept. Okay. Third time lucky, everybody. Accept. No. Tammy Jayne is unable to join. Why are you doing this to me? All right, let's just try this one more time. Sorry, everybody. I promise you this is going to be worth it. I feel really blessed to, oh, here she is.
Third time lucky. Third time's a charm.
I think it might have been about the 47th time. I'm just like, accept, accept.
It's just testing your commitment to doing a live.
I'm definitely committed. There you go. Yes, definitely. I'm committed. This is my first live, so woohoo! Thank you for breaking this barrier that I think a lot of people on Instagram have, right? So we all like to post everything, and you know, we can hide behind a well-edited reel, but when it's like face to face, you're like, oh, you know, that self-sabotage comes straight in.
I totally hear you. It took me a heap of courage to be able to do my first live, and I still feel like I totally suck at them. And the more we practice, the better we get, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've written down a bit of a list of who you are, but maybe you can help me with that because your list is a mile long. You've got these amazing credentials. When you told me yesterday, when you wrote that list of everything you're about, I was like, oh my gosh, like this woman is amazing. So let me run through them. I have to write them and read them. There's too many of them. So you're a home birther, you're a stepmama, you are a chiro by trade, you are a holistic nutritionist, a previous personal trainer, you do somatic business coaching and life coaching, and you describe yourself as passionate about women thriving through motherhood with well-regulated nervous systems and being way showers to their children. Am I on the
yeah,
right?
that's pretty much the vibe.
Yeah, good.
Pretty much the vibe.
Well, I'm feeling pretty blessed that you're with me today, to be honest with you. Thank you so much for making the time. And, you know, I put a call out, I think yesterday, the day before, quite late. I was like, who wants to share their birth story with me? So I really appreciate you putting up your hand. So I guess without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So tell me about yourself. Tell me where you are, who you are, what lights you up. I'm really fascinated by this list of things. I'd love it.
It's just a small list. I'm in mama mode today, so I'm very unkempt and I'm just post surfing, and it's fabulous, right? It's all perfect. So yeah. I'm in New Zealand. I'm in a beautiful part of New Zealand called Papamoa Beach, which is near Tauranga. And I like to think of, to me, this part of New Zealand is kind of like the northern New South Wales Gold Coast of Australia. And so that's except it gets a bit colder in winter. So it's like got that kind of vibe. There's a lot of beautiful humans here that are very passionate about like their, you know, holistic well-being, a lot of entrepreneurs, so it's a really cool place to live, but it's not a place I've lived for very long. So yeah, it's really fun. And I'm just, yeah, I am a very passionate mama. I've birthed one child, and I have acquired 2 other boys along the way through my fiance. And for me, I guess motherhood was a real initiation in many ways, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be, if that makes sense, which I'm sure
I think a lot of women feel that same way, you know.
Yeah.
We can do all the prep, right? But when, you know, like when you get there, you're like, oh my God, this is not quite what I envisioned was going to happen.
Yeah, and I had all the theory and I had all the knowledge, and I had, you know, postgraduate diplomas and, you know, or postgraduate training and certifications in pregnancy care and postnatal care. I had all the research down in terms of like preconception and conception, and, you know, I knew exactly, you know, how to create an optimal environment for pregnancy, and I knew that, you know, what we did in like those preconceptive times and conceptive times potentially has a lasting impact, you know, on our child, we're our baby for literally the rest of their life, essentially. And so I had all of this kind of like knowledge, and I had this deep knowing within my body that women are born for this, you know, like women are born for birth. Like we're born to create life, we're born to birth life, whether that's physically or whether that's metaphorically through our businesses or through other avenues as well. And so when I like got to the point where I was ready, or, you know, agreed with my former husband, like, okay, yes, let's have a baby. It was literally okay, I decided that we would get pregnant. I decided that we would do the preconceptive stuff that I'd put in place for when we were ready to do that. And literally at that 3-month mark, then I was energetically like, right, cool, I'm ready for the sperm to impregnate me. And that's literally what happened. So it was very much a like, you know, boom type thing. And I had in my head, I was like, well, you know, it might take a bit of time. I might need to get myself prepared for the fact that it could take a while. No, that was not what happened.
So are you talking about conscious conception? Is that something that you practiced? That what led you to fall pregnant with your boy?
So I've had take this way back. Like I've had a termination when I was 17, and I did a lot of healing around that, like as I got into my 20s and late 20s, because there was a lot of things that triggered within me that caused a whole cascade of things that, you know, aren't really relevant at this time. But I think what had happened is that I very much consciously shut down like pregnancy as an option until I actually started to do those healing layers. So I'd read a lot about conscious conception. I started practicing that. I started connecting with the soul that I believed I was here to be a vessel for. I did a lot of work actually releasing and healing the connection with the baby that I'd, you know, terminated, because at 17 I wasn't quite so conscious to these things. And then I prepared my physical vessel from a detoxification perspective and a nutrition perspective as well, and really making sure that I was consuming, you know, like as much nutrient dense food as I could, but also had my former husband doing the same thing, because, you know, the sperm starts getting created 90 days or so before that actual conception has, you know, takes place as well. So it was that energetic and spiritual component, but also like actually the environmental, creating the environment, the epigenetics, and the chronobiology to ensure that when we did conceive, I had done as much as I possibly could to put our bodies in the optimal space to create a very healthy, thriving baby.
Yeah. And so were you a nutritionist and a chiro before you fell pregnant with your boy? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I started my journey as a personal trainer, and then who was studying nutrition. So I had like most of an exercise and sports science degree, started personal training, added nutrition, was doing nutrition as well, and was also doing a music degree too. And then I was training a client one day and literally had this kind of like message pop into my head, go be a chiropractor. And I was like, that's really weird. But I was like, okay. So I followed that intuitive nudge and ended up at chiropractic college, and then the rest kind of just flowed from there.
Yeah, right. And so you fell pregnant about 3 months into your into that journey. So what did that look like? Did you know that you were pregnant, or did you rely on feeling pregnancy symptoms, or how did you know that you were pregnant at the first part?
I had a feeling, like I just felt like I was pregnant after having been intimate with my former husband. Like I just felt like I was pregnant, and then I was like, you know, trying to shut down all those kind of knowings and being like, that's absolutely ridiculous, you know, like, no, you know, who gets pregnant on their first try type situation. And then I just felt really tired and really off, and so a few days before you're supposed to test, I was like, oh, let's just see. And sure enough,
just do it.
Yeah. There we were. There were the little lines, and I was like, oh, I guess we're really doing this now.
Oh, right.
So that was kind of how I found out, and I had really thought, because I had done so much work to be healthy, I really thought that I was just going to breeze through this whole pregnancy thing, and I didn't. Like, I did not enjoy being pregnant. Kind of, it was like vomiting 20 times a day type situation. And so I made the decision really early. I was like, I don't want to be in this alone, you know, like I don't, you know, I know how you're supposed to wait until 13 weeks and first trimester's over to start sharing news. But I was kind of like, I just knew that I couldn't hide the fact that I was kind of running to the bathroom between adjusting people. And at the same time, I also didn't want to hide the fact that, like, if something did happen, like if there was a miscarriage, like I wanted to be in a space where actually someone knew, so that I could, you know, be supported in that if that was something that was going to be a reality. And I've never really been one to kind of, I'm like, well, like,
we have this in our culture about not telling anyone for the first 12 weeks, right? Waiting till we have our 12-week scan to not tell anybody. But who made this up? Because, you know, quite often it's in the first 12 weeks that women are feeling really unwell. You know, they really are needing
support.
Yeah, needing a lot of nurturing. So, you know, it's really interesting, this dynamic that our society has, you know, brought us to believe that we don't tell anyone for the first 12 weeks because, you know, in case we have a miscarriage, or, you know, just this in case, you know. And it's really interesting because, like you said, you know, you often need the most support, especially if you're feeling really unwell in the first trimester, to be able to gather the troops. Like, who's going to look after you?
And I don't know, like, this is my personal feeling, but I feel like we've created that to shut us off from our intuition. That's
for sure.
I don't think that was created by women. Like, I think that was something that was created or brought in by doctors or by the medical system, you know, to kind of like put a control or put fear onto a woman to not actually trust her body fully. And that I don't have any evidence towards that whatsoever. Like, I haven't gone back and really researched as to why we wait till the first trimester, but that's just what I feel is the case. And it made no sense. It just made no sense to me. So
and it brings that level of shame and around, you know, if we're, you know, for our own bodies, that, you know, we weren't able to sustain the life. So there's a whole, I mean, we can talk about this in a whole, you know, live on itself. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And really, I find that really interesting, that secretiveness of the first 12 weeks. So,
and I think a lot of women feel a lot of shame around the fact, particularly if you're a high achiever or you are very ambitious or driven, and all of a sudden you've been like, you feel like you've been sideswiped by a truck, and like literally all you can do is lie down and sleep at every moment. Like, for me, there was a lot of identity death that came with being someone who was super productive and super high energy and super fit, and all of a sudden, like, literally couldn't keep food down, couldn't stay awake, you know, like could barely have any energy for anything. So to like have that kind of crash it's a real like identity shock as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the becoming of something else, right? So I know in New Zealand that your midwifery care is probably similar to Australia's, but quite different, as in we have midwives readily available to us in Australia. But I know that in New Zealand, the way you choose your own midwife, is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And how your maternity care system has worked and how you chose your midwife?
Yeah, so for the most part, that's true. So if you choose to go into like a birth care unit, for example, you kind of get hooked up with a team of midwives. And so one of those, well, this is at least how it worked 8 years ago, and I'm pretty sure this is still how it works.
Yeah.
And then one of those, midwives is always going to be like doing your prenatal checks, or then like at birth as well. And then obviously there are I think there's midwives and nurses within some of the hospital systems as well. But women, it's we have a lead maternity carer, and we basically choose who our midwife is. So I had asked around. I knew a few, I knew of a few midwives because working with babies and working with pregnant mamas and working with postpartum as well. I was obviously connected within some of those circles, and I was very clear right from the get-go that I desired to have a home birth because that was where I felt safest. And I wanted to be connected and in partnership with somebody who is very competent and confident in a woman's ability to birth naturally at home, and who also had the capacity to be like, okay, it's time to go somewhere else. Like, this is no longer, if it was no longer safe and appropriate for me or in the best interest of the baby that, was being birthed through me, that she would very clearly say, okay, Tammy, here's your options. What is it that you want to choose to do?
Yeah. And I think a lot of women who are on the fence about home birth, that's a really big point for them. So we kind of have the same thing as lead maternity carers in Australia, but generally for women who has one-on-one care, mostly they come from private midwives, so women that have seek care externally to the hospital. We do have MGPs and things like that, which do offer some one-on-one care, but normally on a roster rotation. So I think that a lot of women that sit on the fence about having a home birth are like, oh, who's my midwife going to be? Does she share the same philosophies with me? What's going to happen if things deviate from normal? What's that going to look like? And I think that women really search for that. Search for that midwife that's going to share the same philosophies, right, whatever they are. But and it looks like you found that.
And I interviewed them. I had kind of 3 that I put on a shortlist, kind of like a coach, really, and I interviewed them. Like, I actually sat down and met with them, and like, I was going on different things, like, how did they feel? Like, how did I feel within their presence? How did my body feel within their presence? But then also, like, well, what were their answers to some specific questions that I had? And just so I could understand, like, what their thought process was, and like how they would rationally work through things. And I'm also very aware that because of my background, I had probably a lot more knowledge or the ability to be empowered in making those decisions because of the journey that I'd been on to date, like over the past kind of decade or so, to actually have that level of trust in my body and to understand the body at a fundamental natural level. So I'm also very aware that most women don't necessarily go into childbirth with that. And I feel like it's really important that women do know that they have, like, it's their body, it's your body, it's your baby. They're partnering with you. Like, you get to feel really safe and really held within that conversation. And the beautiful thing for New Zealanders is that we don't have to pay independently for a home birth. It's our choice as to whether we go into a hospital system, a birth care unit, if your town or city offers that, or more of a home birth experience.
Yeah, and I know that definitely is there is some publicly funded home birth in Australia, but it is extremely limited. And I know that is, a big block for many women that don't sit inside that absolute normal risk category. And, for example, VBAC women aren't able to access publicly funded home birth. Women that, there's lots of variables, but I think that in Australia it can cost upwards of $7,000, between $3,500 to $7,000 to access a home birth. And then if you put a doula on top of that, if you put a birth photographer on top of that, it can become really, really expensive. And especially for women living in regional areas, I really feel for them. A lot of those women have to travel to access like a Airbnb home birth. So that comes with another level of complexity all on its own. So the fact that you have that available in New Zealand is really amazing. And there's a lot of work happening in Australia at the moment to try and get publicly funded home birth more accessible, but it's it really is work in progress. So tell me about your pregnancy. So you said that you had a hard pregnancy. You were unwell for a lot of the time.
I guess it wasn't hard, but it was hard in the sense that I was very nauseous, and I had a lot of purging, a lot of physical purging, just super, super tired. And so, in the scheme of things, 13 weeks passed and I definitely didn't feel better. Like that kind of continued to about 20 weeks. And I guess it was challenging in the sense that there was a lot happening in my business life at that time, and with staff and various things. So I was in a space and in a position where I did, in some senses, I was doing a lot of stuff that needed to be done, and dealing with some stressful situations as well. So there was this part of me that, because I'd never had a baby before, I was like, God, I hope this is worth it on the other side. I can safely say that it is.
I don't think you're alone there. I remember when I was pregnant with my twins, and I said to my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like, I really hope we've done the right thing, because this is next level. I don't know how, you're just living day by day going, oh gosh, I hope tomorrow's easier.
And I just how pregnant women get that glow, and you look at them, you're like, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. I really don't feel like I've got that. I feel like I got pregnant outside, out of my bottom.
I'm sure you did.
Turned into a pregnancy bump, and I was like, oh my goodness, what's actually happening here? So it was just,
I'm sure you did.
There was a lot going on. And I don't think women talk about this, I think sometimes until you know, you don't know sometimes. Yeah. But at the same time, we've kind of, because of the way we live our life, and because we've lost that that deep sacred connection with sisterhood, or it's coming back, but because a lot of women do, a lot of these things just aren't really spoken about. And so it's we kind of, we end up pregnant, and then we all end up within the same boat, and then we kind of wonder what's happening. And then most of us are working full-time jobs, and so now you're exhausted, and now you're growing a human, and now you're trying to work out what the hell's happening with you, and you're working a full-time job as well. Or if it's a second pregnancy, then you've got the baby and the job and the this and the pregnancy. So there's just so much going on, and it's actually quite insane.
We're pretty amazing. I just want to give women a pat on the back, because I mean, how do we do it? I don't know how we do it, but we do. And but I feel like you made just a comment before about that coming back to women, and women kind of really tapping into their intuition. And I've certainly noticed that ripple effect, and that wave is growing. Women are really searching for that deep knowing, and really going within, and really searching for something more than what is necessarily being offered to us, through our modern day maternity.
Yeah, totally.
So you've gotten through the pregnancy. Sounds like you've had so many things going on. When did you go into labor? What gestation were you?
Literally on his gestate. So
wow.
So I hadn't planned to have any ultrasounds done, And because ended up having one done because my measurements and were very different to what we thought my gestate was. And so we decided to have a scan done at the like anatomy scanish point, so that we could just make sure that like, okay, yeah, we were all good. And turns out what had happened is that at that point in my life, one of my cycles was very short, was normal, and one cycle was very long, and I'd missed which one I got it round the wrong way, and so I'd gotten pregnant on the long cycle instead of the short cycle. Okay. So it was a good thing that we had that scan, because it essentially extended my gestate by another just over a couple of weeks, which if that hadn't had happened, I would have been having to very strongly advocate at that point for my right to continue to have a natural birth without induction and all those things. But as it turned out, I went into labour the day of or the night before his gestate.
Okay, so you were measuring small. Is that what you're saying?
I was measuring small.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then figured out why I was measuring small. So that's kind of within that. And then went into the labour the night of his gestate, essentially.
I love that.
And I really I was like, oh, feeling pretty good. I'd had a few breaks and hicks like over the week before. And then that day was literally the first day that I hadn't seen clients, and I was just like, I can't actually see clients today. I think I'm done. And had seen my chiropractor, had an acupuncture appointment, and was just kind of cruising that day. And then got home and I think I was putting groceries away or something, and then felt like I'd wet myself, and I was like, oh, this is a weird sensation.
And you never quite know. You're like, oh, is it?
Like, am I losing it here? Realized that like my waters had broke, and I was like, oh, I guess labor might start to happen, and I don't know, maybe a few hours or within the next 24 hours or something like that. But no, boom, it was all on.
Oh, really?
So it was very different to the textbooks. There was no gradual ease into it. It was literally like, the surges that were happening were every minute or two, like right from the get-go.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm prepared for this.
Especially because in your first mind and with all the knowledge that you had behind you, like, if this is what it's like right at the start, like, what's it going to be like in 12 hours? Like, how am I going to get here?
So it was a bit of like, at that point I was like, okay, right, we need to like, let's just literally think about this. It's like, okay, I better ring my husband. He was with clients, he was a chiropractor as well. My former husband, he's a chiropractor as well. I was like, I rang the receptionist, and I was like, look, I don't want you to like interrupt him or like freak anybody out, but I just want you to know that like my waters are broken. I'm fine. Like, I'm totally good. But just, like when Pete finishes or when he has a break, like, could you just let him know?
Trying to be
she's like, oh my God. And then I met my midwife, and she was at puppy training school, and she's like, I'll pop round on my way, home and just check in with how you at. And she never left. So
yeah,
it really was.
Did you have the puppies with her in the car, or did you drop them home first?
She dropped the puppy home.
I love that. That's one of the things I love about being a home birth midwife is that, just that sense of normalcy about birth. We're at puppy training school, and our client rings us to tell you that, she's in labor. We're like, okay, well, I'll just see you when I finish my puppy's training, and I'll just come and see you on the way home. Like, it's so, the normalcy of home birth is so profound. Like, it's really interesting because there's this level of absolute intricacy about it, that we're not in a hospital, we don't have all these people around to help us, we've got to be really autonomous in the practice. And then the other part of it is just so normal. Like, why would you need all these people? Like, this is just a normal woman having a baby, like, it's no big deal. So it's really interesting because we have the funniest conversations, right? As home birth midwives are like, oh, well, I was just, doing the groceries. She rang me and I was talking to her while I was getting the shredded cheese, you know, like it's just so normal. It's so funny. So your midwife comes to come and support you, and what happens then? Like, how long is it till you have your baby? What's happening at that point?
11 hours. So it was 11 hours from my waters breaking to Oliver's official birth time.
You really are. Is this like really, are you a really on time person? Because I feel like, you know, right on your due date, 12 hours is like the normal, you know, first time. Is this like something that is in your life anyway?
I can be, you know, like depends which mode I'm in. Like when I'm in practitioner chiropractor mode, I'm in time, you know, like I'm in flow, I'm in time, because I'm aware that people have scheduled appointments. And my father is, so like we turned up early to my wedding. I don't know who does that, but there was kind of a joke of like, would it be a Mckenzie wedding if somebody didn't turn up early type thing. So I kind of grew up with this, the joke was like, if you're not early, you're late. So I kind of grew up with that being like a belief system, if that makes sense, when it comes to core things. And it's like something that I've kind of trained out of me in many ways, because I'm like, oh God, I don't want to be the first person at the party, or you know,
someone has to be, you know.
When you're an introvert, it's not that, it's like, you're not. So yeah, yes and no, it depends on the context.
Well, what about your son then? Like, what's his personality? Because we all know that the babies are the ones that trigger labor, right? So it's not really up to the mums. So what about him? Is his personality really, you know, structured and on time?
Can be. Like, he's very aware of time. Like, if it's going to benefit him, if it's going to benefit him, then he'll want to be early.
I feel like that's just kids in general, though, isn't it?
So if it's going to benefit him, then you know, yes, he's going to be there early. But in general, I think so, because I never had, like, you know how I still don't understand how I can with a toddler, but I still don't understand how mothers with a newborn can't get out the door. I still do not understand that. Like, because really? I never had that experience. I just never had that experience. Like, early babyhood, like I would do that first year over and over and over and over again. Like that first 6 months, like bring it on. That was the best from like an experience. I loved it. Like I loved every second of it. You know, Oliver was an absolute, there was a lot of things that happened with me, but Oliver was an absolute dream. You know, he was adjusted from birth. His nervous system was taken care of. You know, he was birthed at home, and you know, I'm aware that not all home birthed chiropractic kids, babies of holistic nutritionists do have that experience. And I also feel like the start that we had given him did play a big role in that as well. And I knew from a really, obviously a young, and my midwife was fantastic as well. Like I remember him sitting there one day and he was crying, one of the rare times he was literally using it. And my midwife happened to phone, it was still in that very early days, and she said, honey, this is you, not him. He's like, honey, basically you get to regulate yourself and he will attune to you. And so as soon as she said, that was essentially what she said, as soon as she said whatever she said, I instantly calmed down. I realized it was my responsibility as the adult in this situation to be able to actually stay calm. And I've always held the belief, and I'm very blessed that I've had some amazing clients who have been celebrity nannies and various things. I've just always, you know, taken these little tidbits that I've been told, and one that stuck with me so deeply was that like a baby in arms knows it's safe and loved. So like a babe in its mother's arms, a babe that's in its father's arms, a babe that's like connected to skin, like even if they're crying the house down because there's, you know, colic or whatever happens to be, if they're in your arms, they know that they're loved and they know that they're safe. And then she also said, she's like, if it becomes any point that you know that potentially you need to step away to regulate yourself, then she was like, don't be worried to put the baby down and walk away for a minute if that's the safest thing for everybody. But I just knew, I was like, okay, cool. I know that no matter what's going on, he knows that he's safe if he's in my arms. And if I'm regulated, then he will have the ability to regulate. And if I can provide a safe space for him to lose it safely, then he will lose it safely, and then we'll attune together. And that's kind of what's happened the whole way through his life, even with some, big, hairy toddler emotions and 6-year-old emotions and all of those different things. It still comes back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important message, I think, for first-time mums. I love that. That is so true. And I really think that I'll adopt that message. I mean, not, in those words, so to speak, because that is so true. A baby that's connected to mum or dad, that's familiar, that's on skin. It doesn't matter what's happening for that baby at that moment. The fundamental thing is that baby knows that it's completely loved and that it is very, very safe.
And it doesn't even have to be mum or dad, just as long as like they are in arms, they know they're safe. And then that's us teaching their nervous systems to regulate, because unfortunately what's happening is because babies are bathing in the juices, aka the nervous systems of their mothers, who happen to be quite dysregulated because of the world that we live in. They're being born with dysregulated nervous systems and dysregulated vagal tone. And so their kind of like reactiveness, or how they respond, is different than it might have been 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, because we just don't live in quite the same environment anymore. There's more stressors going on that have the potential to disrupt our systems unless we're really mindful and proactive around that.
Yeah, but I think, a lot of that is born just from our disconnect in our society. Many years ago, we would have had our aunties around, our mums around, and, grandmothers around. We would have had, this total bubble of support that would have nourished and loved on, the mum in the postpartum, which gave the opportunity for the mum to then feed that on to her baby. So I know in many cultures, well, not many, but I know certainly in Chinese culture, the mum is confined to basically her home for the first 40 days, and she is completely loved on, and she doesn't have to do anything other than, love on her baby, learn her baby, grow their relationship, be healed, whether that's physically, emotionally, whatever she needs to do. She's got time to digest everything, and really, that's putting herself on the best step forward for her motherhood journey. So, and I really feel like we certainly don't give that enough credit. We talk about the birth. I mean, we're here today
and the birth kit
for
the baby, the birth kit for the baby. But what about the post-birth kit for mummy? What about the fact that, whatever kind of birth she's had, whether it's natural or whether there's been intervention, or whether it's, a best case scenario, it's been a very beautiful natural birth, but her whole entire body's still completely opened up. Worst case scenario, she's had some kind of major surgery,
I know.
That's massive. And so it's like, there's so much that's required to nourish and support the mother, but we pack our bags to go to the hospital or go to the birth care with the baby's clothes and maybe some granny undies and some undies and some pads for mummy. But what about everything else? What about the balm for your lady bits that are a little bit tender at that point? And what about the ice face cloths and all of those kind of things? And what about like the nurturing creams and things to kind of make you feel good? Like, no one really, well, they do more now, but it's still not the as much of a focus as I believe that it could be or should be for the mother. And that's why I love so many of those cultures, because it puts the focus more onto the mother as opposed to necessarily the baby, because they know that like the mother being supported is going to wholeheartedly impact the baby as well.
Absolutely. You know, it is completely evident. You know, we have baby showers, you know, where we gift women, you know, nappies and the cutest chew toy, but like, where's the mum? Like, how, you know, we need to hold the mum so much more sacredly than what we really do. But like I said before, I do feel like there's definitely a shift happening. Certainly, I mean, I know that I feel it. There's a shift. Women are really looking for something different.
Yeah, I've loved watching like so many of my friends have like mother's blessing ways, and so many have, you know, been create meal trains for each other. Like that is just something that's so beautiful, and it's just like, okay, yeah, like let's celebrate this. Like it's shifting, it's changing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so your midwives come, you're up to the birth part, you've birthed your baby. What does that look like for you? What does that look like for you in that moment?
I spent a lot of, like, during labor itself, I spent a lot of time in the shower. A lot of time in the shower, a lot of time in the toilet, to the point that I ran out of hot water, and I was like,
I love the
what the hell is going on? So yeah, spent a lot of time in the toilet. She was amazing, very much around like breath and sound, obviously to, you know, bring me into my body. And she was very good at regulating if she saw if I was going up into higher tones, because obviously that is not going to open it, you know, allow a body to feel safe. There was candles on. We lived overlooking, we were in Auckland, and our house looked out onto the viaduct and onto, so there was a lot of lights. So there was this ships and lights and all sorts of things. And so the curtains were open, but the lights were very, very dim. And I either stood a lot or like sat a lot on the toilet or on a birthing ball or in the shower. And probably an hour or so before he was born, I wanted to lie on my right hand side, which was quite odd. That I now understand, like, just through having worked through some different things within my body, that was my body's way of creating space, and that was what my body needed to feel supported, basically, to open up. So I was lying on my side, and yeah, there was the midwife there, and I kind of remember a hot water bottle. I don't know. I was petrified of pooping.
You probably are.
I was petrified of pooping. I pooped quite a lot before this point.
Oh my God.
I can remember
I'm so afraid of it. I don't care. Honestly,
I know you don't care. She's like, oh, honey, that's the last of my worries.
If there's a message out to any pregnant women listening right now, I swear to heaven, we do not care. Just let it come, because your baby will be born.
But it's kind of like orgasm, because sometimes when you are, you know, depending on the type of orgasm, like sometimes, you know, when I orgasm, it does kind of feel like you're going to do a big poo. And so it's kind of quite disconcerting to like let that go, like let go of your mind and just be in your body as everything's opening up. So I can remember this point where in my head, it felt like my body was about to break in two. Like in my head, like the stretch, the opening that was required from me. And I remember kind of like the first time, and I was like, whoa, like it was this internal, like, I don't think I can open that much. Like, I just don't think that I can do that. And then as I understood what that was, like, you know, internally and then obviously logically, I knew what was required to open up. And again, like, I had the core belief my body was born to do this, you know, like that is so fundamental. So I think, you know, like 2 kind of expansions later, and Ollie was earthside, so to speak.
Awesome.
So it can feel textbook birth.
Yeah, it can feel so intimidating, you know, women stepping into that. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, you know, a precipice. You know, you know what's logically is on the other side, but it's allowing yourself to enter, like truly enter that birth portal and completely just open your body. Like your body is opening up to allow another baby, to allow a baby to come through it. Like, this is big, you know, and I think that, you know, when we protect the physiology of birth, like women really are in tune to that and like feel that in every inch of their body, that you know, that those senses of are really being able to open up and allow that body to pass through. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is quite wild. Like, what happens.
Yeah, and it's really, I love hearing women's interpretation of that too, because everyone feels it a little bit differently. So it's so amazing that everyone kind of explains it in a different way, but it all interconnects or all makes sense kind of the same way, that the way that women experience that moment just before babies are born.
Yeah.
So did you have the fetal ejection reflex? Is that, if it was only a few pushes, did you feel like that happened?
Yeah, it was like once his head was through, like it happened very quickly, like kind of next pulse, and then he was earthside.
Yeah.
He had a little cry, and we'd sung Incy Wincy Spider to him a lot, like for whatever reason. I think somebody had given us the Incy Wincy Spider as a book, so his dad had sung that to him a lot. Ollie was crying, his dad sung that, and Ollie stopped crying. I was like, whoa.
That's so
like,
cool, isn't
you
it?
know that they hear everything, and
Of
it was
course,
just like that total that kind of confirmation. And then he was attached to the placenta until the placenta was birthed, so we didn't clamp the cord or cut the cord straight away or anything like that. And I think I just lay on the floor, like wrapped with this little bundle, like I didn't want to move for like a solid hour or so. And I had I'd made like chocolate, like gluten-free chocolate cake or banana bread like the day or so before. I think I had this thing, I was like, I want a birthday cake. So so
that's so funny. I have that on the list for my clients that, you know, that I give to their list at like 35, 36 weeks or so. I have a list. I'm like, you might want to make a birthday cake for your baby.
So I did. So we had birthday cake and birthday banana bread at like 5:30 a.m. in the morning.
I love that.
Midwives loved us. They were like, this is the best birth ever.
I know. If you ever have another baby, ask me. I'll come for cake and tea. Love it. I love that.
And that was kind of it. Like we were.
No if any of my clients are listening, though, you don't have to make cake. It's
but received if it does happen. And then we just were lying on the couch. Like I just remember lying on the couch watching the sunrise. I sent my at the time husband back into practice that day, and my head couldn't contemplate cancelling that many clients in the day, so I was like, you go. You
sent your husband. You just birthed a baby and you sent your husband to work.
Yeah,
you were too high on oxytocin.
I'm either nuts or I had this. And my beautiful mum had she'd booked 3 flights. So she lived in the South Island, I lived in the North Island, and she's like, I'll just book 3 really cheap flights. And she hadn't hopped on the first one. She kind of booked one a week early. She booked one on the guest stage and one for like a week late. And so I'd rang her the night before, and I was like, Mum, it's safe to hop on the plane. Like you can hop on the plane. So she arrived a few hours post Ollie being born, which was really lovely. And she stayed for a week, and it was this very calm, like I know a lot of people say that there's something just different about a home birth space. It's just a very calm energy. And my dad flew up a week or so later, and his words were like, I am going to swear when I say that, he's like, I have to let you know, Tam, I thought you were fucking crazy for, for wanting to have a home birth. And then he's like, and I can understand why. And I was like, oh, that's pretty big for Dad to say. So there was a lot of just deep trust, and it was just an amazing experience, and like not that any birth is right or wrong, but I've been to a few births with clients who had asked me to be at their birth, as their chiropractor, and to check them if needed during birth. It was such a privilege. And I just knew that I didn't feel safe in hospital. Like
Yeah.
that was not where my body felt safe. And I just knew that I didn't feel safe in birth care. That wasn't my optimal environment to, you know, birth a baby into the world. Whereas home, like, that felt good. Like, that felt safe. I didn't want to go anywhere. I wasn't sick. Like, to me, hospitals are for sick people. And I wasn't sick. I was just welcoming a baby into the world. And those were just what made me feel safe. And then I've, you know, like, had conversations with other women, and you know, they're like, well, I don't know where I should have the baby. And I'm like, well, where do you feel safest? You know, like,
that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where do you feel safest? Because that's where you're going to be able to, you know, protect your own birth hormones the best, is where you feel safe. That's how birth works, right? That's the bottom level of it.
It's the whole physiology of it. So
absolutely.
that was it.
That's
and then
so
there was
beautiful.
obviously a whole nother initiation, but, you know, the birth part.
Absolutely. But you know, that first few days, or the way you birth your baby, is the foundation of how you're going to feel as a mum. So if you haven't really, and it doesn't actually matter how you birth your baby, and I think women really get caught on this. I think women feel like, if I don't have this beautiful home birth, listening to the sounds of the whales and there's candlelights around, like, I'm not setting myself up for motherhood. But it's the way you are made to feel. It's the way that you are feeling. And if you feel in control, or you feel like you are the decision maker, then, you know, you're really setting yourself up for a really wonderful postpartum period. So when you moved into your postpartum period, then I know you've got a lot of things happening at the moment. Like, where has, in a really condensed version, I suppose, like, how did your birth impact you on where you've got to now? Like, what has led you? Because I know that you're doing a lot of coaching, and you've got a program starting. Yes. Yeah. So how did that journey lead you on to what's happening?
Massively. I thought that I would literally be a woman who birthed a baby and went back and saw her clients the next day. Like, I honestly thought that would literally be the case. And I had no desire to go anywhere. Like, it was like, I didn't want to move. And I also wanted to, you know, still have purpose, and still have purpose
it's that
outside of motherhood. You know, purpose outside of motherhood. And so I threw myself online, basically, and I just started talking about things that I was passionate about at the time. And I just started literally sharing my journey of, you know, motherhood, and you know, conception and preconception, and introducing solids, and releasing weight, and learning how to love yourself, and autoimmune conditions. I'd had a very long journey with, like, bulimia personally, and, you know, autoimmune conditions as well that I'd healed from. And so I just started to share those pieces, and digestion and the nervous system and various pieces like that. And then that kind of led into programs and memberships and masterminds and coaching and all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of transitioned into, I guess, business coaching. And then it also transitioned into more like affiliate marketing. So less of my products and services, and more partnering with products that I believe in passionately. So, you know, I'm a distributor for magic water machines, for example. And so I help people create personal brands and online businesses in that way. Or I still work one-on-one as a chiropractor, but from a perspective of I want to, and I desire to, and I love to, versus needing to or having to. So I retired for a few years, and then a year or so ago started practicing again, and just have it's just from such a different energy, and from such a different place. But it really made me passionate, you know, clear about time, and where I wanted my time to be invested, and how much time I wanted to have. And what I realized is that when I was doing a lot of still mentoring and coaching from an online perspective, I was still doing a lot of one-on-one work. And because I was doing it alone and doing all the tech stuff, I'd really created myself like another job, even though I could do it around the baby. But as the baby grew and turned into a toddler, that wasn't quite as easy. as it had been when he was a baby and slept a good chunk of the day. So it's really taught me to, you know, like a lot of flexibility and change, and being okay to change as well. And then it initiated for me a really big journey into coming back into connection with the wisdom of my body on a deeper level, but also healing a lot of like inner masculine and inner feminine dynamics within me as well, because I did a whole heap of things that I'd never let clients do, basically. Like I went back and started doing CrossFit like way too soon post-birth, and created a prolapse and all of these beautiful things, which I'm so glad happened now, because I know that our bodies can heal from anything. And without that experience, without that pain, I wouldn't have been catapulted into searching out some of the somatic and the sexual healing that I did go down the path of seeking out. And so my whole relationship to myself and to my body, and, you know, opening back up to, you know, to a woman's natural state, and to reclaiming pleasure and orgasm and multi-orgasm and those kind of things, I never would have tapped into that without those traumatic, painful things happening. So it was kind of, I don't know, birthing a baby was just like the, you know,
the birthing of you almost sounds like, or the like,
and it continues to be so, you know, like it continues to be so as Ollie grows and as we evolve through different seasons. So you know, I've had periods where he hasn't lived primarily with me. He's lived primarily with his father as we separated. He lives with me at the moment. You know, we've embarked into home learning. Like there's always another layer that's available for us.
Absolutely. But that's, you know, that's just the beauty of life, right? That's just how we live and grow. And I think that we all get these life lessons, and they're all here to teach us something. So we just kind of have to dive into that.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, tell me if you can. I know you've got this program, and I just want to hear a little, because I don't know anything about it. Before we go, can you tell me a little bit about what you're launching in November? I can see that you're launching something. November. Is it the first of the first? No.
Oh, that was last year.
Oh, that was last year.
What happened in November?
I'm a little bit behind. What was it that you launched? Tell me, please, because launched.
One of my beautiful friends who's also a mama of three, is on the Gold Coast Christie Award. We basically created this movement for women called Financially Free Females, and it's very much come from this place of like a lit up and financially free female will literally transform the frequency of the planet. And the way that I see it is that in the world today, 95% of the health decisions for a child are made by the mother, according to current health statistics and research. And there's a lot of women who feel, I believe, are financially disempowered and financially dependent. And so what has always been really important for me is having my own financial independence and being on the path to creating financial freedom, meaning that, you know, one day in the future, doing anything becomes truly for purpose sake, you know, truly for desire, because there's no need to work per se, because that's taken care of. So really, this movement was really birthed from this place of really desiring to support women to reclaim their sovereignty and really create that financial sovereignty for themselves, so that they can truly thrive in every area of life. Because the more that we open up to that financial sovereignty as well, and the more that expands, then the more choice that we have, you know, the more choice we have in terms of how we choose to care for our children, or birth our children, or nourish our children. You know, like there's options that open up to us when we have more resources of money that aren't there if we don't have those resources of money. I know, like when we lived in Australia, because I haven't chosen to vaccinate our child when he was in daycare, like that was full fee. So, you know, to send him to have early childhood support was a private school education, you know, and most typical New Zealand Australian families, that's not really in their, you know, in their realm. So choice. Basically, it was just created to have choice, and to also to figure out, you know, like when we're not limited by our bank accounts, we kind of get to truly discover who we are. You know, like what do we desire? What do we like to wear? How do we like to spend our time? What is exciting to us? You know, like you know, I'm learning how to surf with Ollie at the moment. So, you know, being able to buy a surfboard and have surf lessons and, you know, things like that, different healing avenues, you know, like really being able to open up to invest in ourselves to further heal, or to invest in birth mentors, or all of these beautiful things that allow us to be so supported as women. So to me, like the health and the wealth are kind of like they're very inextricably linked.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if people want to find more about that, where do they go searching for that information? Where can they find you?
We've literally just got a Facebook group, so they can just message and be like, hey, I want to join Financially Free Females. And there's conversations on like changing your wealth identity, and various different conversations about different ways that you can go about creating financial independence. But I think there's a book club that's run. Like we've just run a book club on the book was called Sacred Success, which is a super beautiful book, and we're about to run like another book club around Code Red, which is a Lisa Lister book, which is all around, I don't know if you've heard about, but all around like looking into tapping into the powers of your menstrual cycle, and you know, like utilizing the powers of your menstrual cycle as a woman within life and business. So like tapping into those kind of things as well.
Sounds absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for coming on here with me today and cracking these first live virginity plates. I really appreciate that. So it
was so much fun. Thank you for the honor.
Yeah, I've had such a blast. I will I don't actually know how to, I'm going to try and save this conversation if anyone's missed it, and then I'll repost it. But yeah, I just wanted to, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that really intimate story with us, because you know, it's really wonderful for women to be able to share stories. I mean, that's how we learn, right? So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for what you're doing. Like, just the work that you are doing in the world is so beautiful, and it's so potent, and it's so needed. And I really hope that more and more women choose to have, you know, the birth experience that they desire and be really supported through that process by a birth mentor as well.
Absolutely. Okie dokie. Thank you. I now have to work out how to stop the video. So that's my next technical thing that I have to learn how to do. So so it's been a wonderful learning journey today. So anyway, we'll catch you up soon.
Big love. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.